We will now introduce pivot wider and pivot longer. First off, when we have a variable spread across multiple columns, we will use pivot longer. Let's take a look again at table 4A. This might have previously been in the version that you saw that would have been gather, if you're used to the old tidyr. We can see that in this data set, what we would like to do is take the titles here, and those become a variable called year. And then the entries for those are going to become cases. So we are going to use the pivot longer verb to do this. And we are going to specify the columns that we want to take and make into the names, and then where the values are going to go, what that column is going to be called. So we can see that what we're going to do is take table 4A, and we're going to make a tidy version of that. And I will call the tidy version tidy 4A. And I'm going to input table 4A to the pivot longer function, setting the columns to be the columns that I want to, if you will, change, and where I'm going to put the names. So what the names of those columns, which was 1999 and 2000, that's going to go in a new column that I will call year. And the values that are in those columns are going to go to cases. So now I look at tidy 4A, and I can see that the data set has been, in fact, transformed into that. Now, exercise number 2 is for you to do the same exact thing to table 4B and call it tidy 4B. In order to put those two results together, we're going to use something that we'll talk more about in a future week, but I will just introduce it to you now that we can do what's called a full join on those two data sets, and you should get something that looks like this. You will now do exercises 3 and 4, to tidy up the data sets relig income and monkey MEM. So you should be practicing with pivot longer to do those. Another case that occurs occasionally, but not nearly as frequently, is a case like we have in table 2, where I have my observations are spread over multiple rows. So we want to, in fact, make this data set wider than it was previously. So in this case, what I'd like to do is to convert and make this be these variables that are in here. Those are really the names of my variables, right? So those are going to go to these column headings, and the values that are in there are going to go into those places. Okay, so I'm going to give pivot wider a couple of inputs. I am going to tell it where to pull the variable names from, and I'm going to tell it where to pull the values from. So in this case, I don't put the quotes around type or count because those are already variable names that it knows, so it recognizes those. You'll recall back when I did the pivot longer, I had to give quotes around when I'm setting up a new name. So here, in fact, I've used pivot wider to convert that data set and tidy it up. You are now going to do the same thing for the fish encounters data set as exercise 5. So here's your fish encounters data set, and you're going to use a values fill option in order to fill in places where there were no fish that were seen before. When you complete that, you will also do the similar sort of thing and pivot wider the spread flowers 1, the flowers 1 data set. And I suggest you use read_CSV2 to read that in, because those are separated by semicolons rather than commas. And that's the end of video 2. Once you finish those exercises, read the next section of the book, come back for video 3 and to complete those exercises.